Hello, welcome back at SALAXLEY TV. We have a great show for you today. I'm Mohammed Ahmed. Today we are joined a guest who is running to lead Seattle into the next chapter, Memorial candidate Joe Mallahan. For corporate leadership to grassroots organizing, Joe brings a mixed experience to the race. Today we ask him about that translated into result Seattle community. Thank you for Joe for coming.
Thanks, Mohammed,
for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for your hospitality.
Can you please introduce yourself to our audience and tell us why you're running for mayor in Seattle?
Sure. My name is Joe Mallahan, and I'm running for mayor of Seattle because I think we have great values in Seattle, but our values are not reflected on our streets. We're not getting great performance from our city government. And I have 30 years of change maker management experience that I think I can bring to Seattle and make big change. When I was a young man, I did community organizing with the same organization that Barack Obama organized with in Chicago. And I learned a lot about the importance of relationship from that, and that the power of community, bringing community together. I then went on to 30 years business career. I turned around, in other words, I made much more profitable two medium-sized companies. One had about 250 people. I guess they both had about 250 people each. I then went to T-Mobile, which is a giant wireless company, and made huge change there. One of the things I did I'm most proud of at T-Mobile is that it used to be that if you had bad credit, you could not get T-Mobile service, or at least not the good service. And I understood that bad credit doesn't mean you are a bad person. It's that you don't have a lot of money, or you're a recent immigrant, and so you have no credit history. And I explained that to the T-Mobile leadership, and my team innovated new solutions that allowed every person, regardless of income, to get great value from wireless. This was many years ago. If you look today across the industry, largely low-income people and immigrants get great value, the same value as wealthy people do. You know, phones are a little bit more complicated, but I'm very, very proud of what we did. We innovated and added tens of millions of new customers when my team innovated a solution to the credit problem. So that's my progressive values, my focus on immigrants and people of low income, having a real impact in the corporate world. The whole industry has adopted the T-Mobile approach, and I'm very, very proud of that. So again, I want to bring that sort of change management and strong leadership to Seattle government.
And your vision for Seattle. Let's begin with the big picture, the vision. What kind of city do you want Seattle to be the 4 years from now if you're elected?
So what I want the city to be, one, is to be much safer. And I want homelessness to be a far smaller problem. And then finally, I want to focus on affordability. So safety to me is primarily about the fact we have really a dysfunctional police force. The police work a ton of overtime. They're a little bit demoralized, and they have a culture that is often unfriendly to immigrants and to other marginalized people. And I think that the change really requires a very hard-nosed and big-hearted mayor to engage with the police department, correct the morale problem there, but also hold them accountable and ensure that we are inculcating values that include respect for young black men, for example. I mean, this is a real problem in Seattle. And I think a progressive, big-hearted, hard-nosed manager, because I get big things done, is the solution. My goal is to ride in 50 ride-alongs, like join the police officer in the patrol car 50 times in the first year. So once a week, I'll spend a couple hours with the officer and reconnect them to the community. I think community-based policing is so important. So that's public safety. Homelessness, the biggest problem with our homelessness today is addiction and mental health. We have probably 5,000 people on the streets. They're using drugs openly on the streets, and then just creating a public health and public safety crisis. And you can't treat addiction while people are on the streets. We need to build a lot more emergency shelters. There's a mayor in Portland, another business person like me, who in his first 6 months added 3,000 additional emergency beds. I think we can do the same, and that's my pledge. I also want to focus on tiny home villages. I think you've seen these tiny homes. There are 300 tiny homes sitting in a parking lot in South Seattle because the mayor won't permit additional tiny home villages. He thinks, oh, the county should take care of that. Well, the homeless are not in the county. They're in Seattle. I also think we need to have a little bit more of a hold the homeless accountable. In other words, I'm going to give you a place to stay. You recover from your trauma of homelessness, but now we need to focus on your addiction. Right now, we have a lot of services that we take care of these folks without really pushing them to deal with their addiction, and that creates sort of a vicious cycle. Then my third thing is affordability. I think we need to build more affordable housing, but do it in such a way that's respectful of the community and has dedicated units that have under market price. And that is doable with federal tax credits using private companies. So we have private development and we also have not-for-profit development. Both of them are good, but we need to do more. And the more needs to come from private development, so it's not the city's money.
That was in my second question, affordable housing access. You've been involved in housing justice work in Chicago.
I have, yeah.
How will you apply that experience to address Seattle housing shortage?
Well, again, thank you, Mohammed. The main point about what I did in Chicago, it was all relational. I was one of about 20 leaders who built a 10,000-person community organization to press the city of Chicago to provide housing and other services to immigrants and low-income people. That particular experience isn't exactly applicable in Seattle because I was pressing change to the leaders. If I'm the leader, it's a little, I want to be honest. You need to press me, but my commitment to you is that I'm going to have deep relationships with the communities. So, for example, the Somali community, I have, in my campaign in the last 6 weeks, I have visited 3 different mosques. I was at Lake City Mosque, and then the Northgate Mosque, and then just yesterday, I was in the High Point Mosque for prayer, and I spoke to the 150 people who were at the mosque, and it was really wonderful. There was a lot of small children, and we had these campaign signs, and they were all excited. They took them and started putting them everywhere around the community center that's used as a mosque there. And it was just a lovely experience. But I guess my point is I am making real effort to connect to the Somali community and to the Muslim community and obviously the larger immigrant communities in Seattle. And it's through strong relationships that you can hold me accountable. If I know you, then when you come to me and say, Joe, you're not fixing this problem, I'm going to have more of a reaction to that because you and I have a relationship. And that's my goal. And I think you can see that in the activity of my campaign. And
you have called for restoring 100 million in cuts to housing and homelessness. Where will that funding come from and how will you ensure it's effective?
Yeah, so the mayor has a lot of latitude. The city council passes a budget, but then the mayor has very strong latitude to move money around. And because we have a little bit of a budget crisis because taxes are down, he stripped $100 million out of programs that address homelessness. So the way I expect to recover that money is, one, if we have better public safety, then we have businesses returning to Seattle. Downtown, there's like an 80% vacancy rate. All those big skyscrapers that used to have businesses in them are all empty. And also our retail revenue, that is all the money that all of our small businesses are earning, which they pay a little bit of sales tax on and other taxes, That retail revenue is down 15% compared to 2 years ago. And I think that's all about homelessness and public safety. So if we fix those things, the revenues will increase. But then the other source of revenue, I think, is efficiency. Again, at T-Mobile, I hired many operations research PhDs, so from the University of Washington, who were efficiency experts. And we drove billions of dollars of efficiencies at T-Mobile. T-Mobile is a much bigger organization than Seattle city government. The total city government budget is $7 billion, and about $5 billion of that is for city light and water and sewage, so for utilities. But there's about $2 billion in general fund. So I think we could find 10% efficiency there, which would give you about $2 billion to work with. That can't happen overnight, but it can happen quickly. I should mention these people I hired from University of Washington with PhDs. I think 3 or 4 of them were Turkish guys. The reason is in Istanbul, there's a wonderful university that graduates bachelor's degrees in operations research, and it's a feeder school to University of Washington. And it's through those 3 Turkish guys that I met my current wife. My wife, Süreyya, is a Turkish woman, and I've probably been to Istanbul 15 times, so I have many, many Muslim friends. And I have, a little bit of a sense of the culture and values that Islam promotes. And so I really do feel a connection to the Muslim community.
And what does the reform for SPD, Seattle Police Department, look like under your leadership? And how will you balance public safety with accountability? Yeah,
that's a great question. So reforming and re-engaging the police is a very complex thing. One, I think we need better civilian oversight. Our current mayor negotiated away civilian oversight in the last contract. Secondly, we just need more staffing. And our staffing is a real problem because there's bad morale. Many officers don't like working for Seattle, and there's many reasons for that. Some of them have a bad attitude that came from our reaction to the George Floyd assassination. A lot of them went to easier places to work, like Bellevue and Everett and such. But we still have a very high attrition. There's many officers still leaving every month. And the mayor is paying $50,000 signing bonuses. By the way, we should find some Somali community people to join the police force. Seriously, in terms of diversity and achieving that community connection. But we're hiring officers at a very high cost, but we still have officers leaving, so we need to fix that. But the additional reform, I think, is cultural. The mayor, our current mayor, is checked out from the police department. I talk to civilians and officers. They rarely hear from him. And I really think we need cultural reform. And as I was saying earlier, if you have an activist mayor who's heavily engaged with the police, I think we can change the culture. It's a very, very difficult task, but I've made big cultural reforms in other organizations, and I think I can achieve that as well. I'm trying to think if I fully answered your question there.
Yeah, yes, you did. And many advocates want mental health professional, not police, to respond 911 calls.
Great, yeah.
What's your plan to expand those alternatives?
That's a great point. If I could reiterate, we're spending $100 million in overtime for our current police. So not only do we need to hire more and fix attrition, we need to make a couple other changes. And one of them is to expand the care team. So we do have this team that's in the police department. It's about 25 people. They have mental health expertise. They have their own patrol cars. They're white cars that say care team on the side. But it's only 25 people. And in my estimation, it should probably be 150 people. And when a call comes into 911 and the caller says, hey, I've got this person experiencing a mental health thing, they're breaking windows or they're scaring people in the neighborhood, sometimes it's right for a police officer and a care person to go and ensure it's not dangerous. But care people could arrive, and if it is dangerous, they could call police. So I think we could get rid of like 150 positions. Sorry, I'm not on the camera. Okay. I think we could eliminate some patrol officer positions and replace them with social work positions. It's more effective, and it's also much more cost effective. And then one other thing, if I may, with the police, is I think we should focus on automating traffic. If you look at Rainier Avenue and particularly MLK, Martin Luther King Way, along the transit corridor, I've been down at the transit places, transit stations, passing out my literature, and I'm just extraordinarily impressed with how fast traffic is going. You know, it's a 25-mile-an-hour zone, and people are going 40, 45 miles an hour. We should simply automate that, where, you know, cameras and radar, I see your license plate, Mohammed, and I'm giving you a warning on the first time. Hey, Mohammed, you're going way too fast. And second time, you're getting a ticket. That gets the police out of that business, which again saves a bunch of money and also reduces the opportunity for young men, and mostly young men, to have escalations with the police. If we just get the police out of that business, we save money and we improve public safety, particularly for our young men. And in Seattle, the city neighborhood, not all treated equally. Sure. How will you make sure investment reach places like Rainier Valley, South Seattle, and immigrant communities? Well, yeah, again, one example of the fact that we don't treat all neighborhoods equally is the fact that the light rail is on the surface in South Seattle, right? And that creates the safety problem that I'm describing. Another thing is we tend to let developers come in and mow down trees and build buildings without adequate oversight. Finally, there are all these wealthy people who have come to Seattle, you know, Amazon and Microsoft and even T-Mobile. We have recruited a lot of people into the Seattle area, and that creates huge housing pressures. So we have developers buying land in like the Central District and in the Rainier Valley and building big townhomes. They're sort of for rich people, you know, they're big homes, they're not little apartments. And that increases the value of the land underneath the folks. And so people who have owned land or owned a home are suddenly, their taxes are going way up because the value has gone way up. And I think we need to develop an anti-displacement program where somehow we change the tax law or we provide subsidies to residents who've lived in their homes, you know, for more than 10 years and might get pushed out otherwise. So those are some of my ideas, but I clearly understand that lower income communities and quite frankly, African communities and African American communities don't get the same attention. And I'm committed and I'm also very committed, again, through relationship, understanding what your needs are and your perceptions. And I'm just beginning to do that. But that's my commitment to you, is to understand what your needs are, and as your mayor, to lead on your behalf. Great. And you have worked night shift with employees and held listening session at T-Mobile. How does that kind of leadership shows up at the city government? Yeah, if I could just expand. I appreciate how much you know about me, Mohammed. So when I was president of a company, it was a home improvement company, a little bit like Home Depot, but smaller. And that was in Chicago. I was the CEO. I worked the night shift of a warehouse for a week with maybe 25 employees to try to understand the processes and get feedback from them about what was broken. And we found all kinds of things to improve, and we almost doubled the gross profit of that company through the fixes we made. So, and I did the same at T-Mobile. When I told you earlier that I did a lot around serving low-income, poor credit customers get great service from T-Mobile. The way I solved those problems was I visited a lot of call centers, and I watched calls, sat next to agents as they took calls on the phone, and then I brought them in a group, and I said, hey, tell me, I'm trying to fix this credit problem. Do you have any ideas? And there was a young man in Colorado Springs, Colorado, who gave me an idea that's kind of complex to describe, but it was a fantastic idea. I immediately brought that back to Seattle, and working with like 500 technologists and engineers and marketing and training people, we launched a product in just a few months, and that's what allowed us to add 10 million a year incremental low credit customers. Made a lot of money for T-Mobile, but then we also gave great value to those customers. So that's what I mean by shoulder to. So what can I do in Seattle? It's getting shoulder to shoulder with the residents and with the Seattle city employees. I think city employees are very talented, and the vast majority of them are very dedicated, but they don't have an opportunity to talk to their leadership and say, hey, here's what's going to fix. If the leadership asks them, hey, what is inefficient? What should we change? What should we stop doing? Or what do we need to do more of? The employees, I know this from my history, they will be enthusiastic to give their response, and then I'm obligated to actually execute those so I don't look like a fool. So that's my process.
And what new strategy will you bring to address the root cause of homelessness and not just for the symptoms?
Well, yeah, so the root causes of homelessness, there's maybe three. I mean, one is obviously economic. If someone has lost a job and they don't have a ton of social support, they're at risk of becoming homeless. And I think for that, we need to have intervention services. We already have some of those services. I think they could be more effective. The second cause is mental health, and that just requires us to have more mental health resources available. And there's a huge budget. We spend over $200 million a year on homelessness in Seattle, and we simply have to expand the budget for mental health. And then the third thing is addiction. And quite frankly, today, addiction is the biggest problem. As I said earlier, probably 5,000 people on the streets are suffering addiction. They're using drugs openly on the streets because we don't have the police capacity, nor do we actually have the mentality to not allow that to happen. As I said before, the way to address that is to create lots more emergency beds and tell the homeless, you need to come in and recover from your homelessness, the trauma of that, and then we're going to work on your addiction. And that, again, tiny home villages, like 50 little tiny houses where people can be safe, but wraparound services around mental health and addiction. And then also, I want to really reiterate, people suffering addiction, I know this from my own experience with loved ones, people suffering addiction, they need a community to press them and encourage them. And today, we put a lot of addicted people into apartments where we allow them to continue to use drugs. And that is just a recipe for death. We think we're doing them a favor. We're not doing them a favor, and it's massively costly. And recently, Mohammed, I sat down with 25 homeless people on the streets of Seattle. I'd see a homeless person. I go and introduce myself. I say, hey, can I listen to your story? I'm sitting on the sidewalk with that homeless person, and I ask them, what's your story? And are you using drugs, and are you suffering addiction? And what I found was about 40% of those people, they came to Seattle because they were addicted and they knew that they could be in Seattle and use openly without being harassed or without being asked not to. So our permissive culture is actually drawing to Seattle many homeless people.
From different states.
From different places, that's right. And again, that's... once they're here, once they're residing in Seattle, we need to take care of them. But if the news on the street is, oh, you come to Seattle, it's very easy to sit and use, which it is, then you're always going to be attracting more. So one of the root causes of homelessness is our own policy that attracts people who are addicted.
40%, that's a big number.
Yeah. And again, this is my own research, literally sitting and talking to each individual.
That shows that a lot of people coming for easy.
Yeah.
And many elected officials say they listen, but don't follow through. What will you do different to stay accountable to the people?
Yeah, again, I think I've already said this once, but I'll say it again. The way that I'm going to follow through is I'm going to let you pressure me. And the way you can pressure me is if we have a relationship. And I am very, very committed to having deep relationships with the people of Seattle. And I must say, I really love people. I mean, my values are Christian values, but they're very similar to Muslim values. I love every human being. Recently, I was in Columbia City, I was at a forum where there was a heckler. There was a person yelling to me horrible things. And I said to that person, hey, sir, I disagree with you, but I love you. And I want to get to know you better and have a dialogue. And Bruce Harrell was sitting right next to me. And Bruce Harrell says, Joe Mallahan says he loves that guy, but how can he love that guy? He doesn't even know him. Well, to me, that shows that our mayor does not have Christian or Muslim values, because it should be very easy to understand that we love each other. It's God requires us to love each other, all human beings. And that's the values I truly want to bring to Seattle.